Good evening and welcome to the October 24, 2023 Lower Frederick Township Board of Supervisors work session. Township meetings are recorded for the purpose of preparing the meetings, and the recording is destroyed after the minutes are approved. The meeting will be posted online on the Township YouTube channel. The link can be found on the Board of Supervisors page on the Township website. It is requested that all persons wishing to speak before the board shall state their name, address, and the subject matter upon which they wish to speak for the record. In the interest of facilitating the business of the board, all persons addressing the board shall be limited to 3 minutes unless such time is extended by the chair for good cause. Individuals are requested to remain in their seats and to respect when other persons are speaking. The Board of Supervisors will provide a reasonable opportunity for citizens to comment on any non-agenda items after all agenda items have been addressed, but prior to the adjournment of the public meeting. And those of you who come on a regular basis may have noticed the room looks a little different. We finally have our new microphones, which hopefully will work all the time. And we also do not have our projector, so when we have a presentation, hopefully your viewing will be also improved. That's what the changes we have today. We had an executive session on October 12th, and we also had one before this meeting to discuss litigation and some legal issues. And I also want to announce, not an executive session, but 3 members of the board attended an information-only meeting with the fire company on October 10th. No business was conducted and there was no deliberation. All right, first item of business. Open.
Do you want to pledge?
Oh, I'm sorry. Pardon me, I forgot the pledge. Excuse me. Let's have the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, sorry about that. I guess I was so excited about all the new microphones, I forgot about the Pledge of Allegiance. All right. Really?
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it's on.
So
It is on. The green light's on.
you gotta be closer to
If
the
I get any
mic.
closer, I'm going to be consuming it. Is that better? Okay, wow, that's close. All right. Okay, first item of business is the Open Source Committee request to authorize submitting a grant to the Highlands Conservation for the Barber property. Mr. Babbitt, you're going to give us an overview for this? Thank you. Do you have enough? Is one of these for Carol? Yeah. Okay. Oh, good. Okay.
You might have to hit the button, Matt.
Check.
Great. So my name is Matt Babbitt. I'm from Heritage Conservancy. We're a nonprofit land trust located in Doylestown. Do you need me to state the address? No?
No.
Okay. We are here before the board with follow-up from a spring application to DCNR, to their conservation grant program. We applied actually last fall and were denied. We're encouraged to reapply for the spring round, strengthened our application, and unfortunately were denied again. It seems from our conversation with folks at DCNR that they had more applications and less money than ever before. And it does seem as though their program is skewing pretty far to fee simple acquisitions as opposed to just conservation easements. But we do have another opportunity to protect the property on Salford Station, albeit under a little bit different scenarios than the DCNR grant. So the potential is to apply to a federal Highlands program grant, which is administered through U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, would actually get awarded to the state, and then the township would be a sub-awardee. This is the first year that municipalities are allowed to apply to this. As a nonprofit, we actually cannot apply. Only a municipality can apply. So either the township or the county would have to be the applicant. But it does have a very quick turnaround time, which I know is not something that works well, but it's the boat we're in. The application would be due to the folks at DCNR by the week of Thanksgiving. They have to turn around and get it into U.S. Fish and Wildlife by the 30th of November. And then hopefully sometime in January, we would actually get the award notice and then have the ability to start on the project, which was the same timeline as the DCNR grant had we gotten it, a January start time. I've got 3 pages for you here. The first is just a reminder of the map with the proposed protection areas and showing potential for public access down to the Perkiomen, pending a review of the property there. The second page is somewhat of an updated budget. The Highlands grant actually will match both the highest protection and the standard protection area, which would increase the ability of township dollars to be used to a greater amount. The county has indicated that they're still in at the same amount, albeit it still has to get voted by their commissioners, but their open space committee has recommended the same commitment. What will be different for the federal program is that it requires a yellow book appraisal, which is held to a higher standard than just your real estate appraisal or even the conservation easement appraisal we previously got. Luckily, the company who did the first appraisal for the DCNR grant is able to kind of use the information they had from that for the yellow book, and are offering to do the yellow book appraisal at a lower cost. But it does have to be updated, and so thus the appraised value of the property, the per acre price, could change, which would come at a later time. Because of this quick deadline for the federal grant, we have to submit everything to DCNR with the valuation we have, with a note that the yellow book appraisal is pending and thus could change valuations. I'm not an appraiser, so I can't really speak to how that might increase or decrease the property's value. They would mainly look to update the comparable properties, and there's a lot more internal reporting they have to do within the document because of the yellow book. Right now, the cost is not too much different. You can see at the bottom in this little mini section right here, the DCNR was the township's contribution for the DCNR grant, and right now it has only gone up $150, I believe, $160, because of a better estimated price on a phase 1 environmental there. The kind of the due diligence costs, the project costs here aren't really going to change out the project. What could change is this top section, the property's valuation. Between talking to you all and the county has the funding to be the applicant and to cover the expenses because it is a reimbursement grant. However, the applicant also has to be holder of the easement. And right now, the county is not a holder of any easement, and thus would have to, set precedent to be the applicant and take on being holder of the property. As I understand it from conversations with your Open Space Council, the township has at least one easement that they are the holder of, and thus it would not be such of a question for the township to be the applicant and thus the holder of the easement. Under the DCNR grant, Heritage was going to be the holder of the easement. That does bring some legal implications with it. It does make the township legally responsible for annual monitoring and violation enforcement. There's a world where we could be contracted to do the monitoring for you, realizing the township might have this space, but that could be worked out later. Right now, we're really just trying to focus on, can we get this grant application in? But because the in the scenario where the township is the applicant and thus the holder, and this is a reimbursement grant, the township could still bring their 12.5%. The county is going to match their 37.5%. But because of this reimbursement grant, the applicant has to front everything, including the easement purchase price, and then submit everything to the state. They submit everything to the feds reimburse the state reimburses the township. So it'd be a little bit of a time of getting that money back. I don't know the exact timeline. I asked the Federal Highlands program manager today, and he just didn't have that information because this is the first year with municipalities applying. Realizing there's a pretty sizable gap of needing to cover, $277.50 there, that, it seems as though the township might not have available. Heritage is pretty confident and in the middle of discussions of being able to provide a bridge loan to front that half, as provided, we get reimbursed once the township gets reimbursed. Otherwise, it would be the county having to lend you guys money, and they aren't really up for acting as a bank like that. We have a dedicated fund that should have monies available. It's just getting the approvals that are there, but we would get that sorted out before this deadline. And then the third page is just a rough timeline of the next month and a half. There's really only one more meeting between you guys and the county to get approvals and resolutions, and to get everything sorted out. We have offered to do the ghost writing of the application. We'll let your committee and board review whatever is submitted. We can use a lot of the same language and information from the DCNR grant, which helps save a lot of time. And then we actually would give that to the state representative. He would add his things and proofread it, and then he would submit it to U.S. Fish and Wildlife. So that's why there's such a quick, kind of a double turnaround. I've spoke a lot. I'm going to let questions fly.
Are there any questions from the board about this?
No, I'll let you guys go first.
So just for the public, this is basically the same as the earlier grant. We're still looking to preserve the property, and this is another opportunity to do so.
Okay, I'll start.
Yeah.
Chuck Geiser. So I just want to make sure I understand the last part that you talked about, that if we get awarded this grant, the federal portion of the grant, we would be responsible for covering that, and then we would get reimbursed through the state?
Correct.
Because the federal government will give it to the state, and the state will give it to Lower Frederick.
Correct, as a sub-awardee.
And we don't know how long that takes?
Not right now. He didn't know, but he was also meeting tomorrow with this Federal Highlands program. It's really a landscape between Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. Mm-hmm. So all four of those state partners are meeting tomorrow, and he was going to ask for some clarification on those reimbursement timelines. I know with working with the state for DCNR, once you have all the grant closeout report submitted, which takes some time because of needing recorded documents, and it takes a little bit for the title policy to come through. Once you get all your documentation in, it's normally been about a 6 to 8 week turnaround time to get dollars back. Okay. But I can't speak to the federal.
But just so I understand, so we're talking about $277,000 plus or minus, plus the $69,000, right?
Correct.
So it's
whatever that number is, the sum of those two numbers.
Correct.
Is what the township would have to be putting in January if this were approved.
Not necessarily right at January. A lot of these due diligence items are going to kind of come in different phases. And then at the end, when we go to settlement to actually close, the big ticket, or the big payment would come then, which will likely be in this summer. You know, it could push into the fall depending upon how, you know, if the title search is messy and needs cleaning up, or, you know, if we hit something, but it's normally about a 6-month due diligence process. So there would be some of these title, you know, like we're gonna have to order the appraisal now. This program requires a grant appraisal, or I'm sorry, a review appraisal. And then there's the survey, which takes quite a bit of time. The title search always takes a bit of time. So we'll be kind of working through that tick list to get us to settlement.
Okay. And then the county puts in their money when?
You know, the county, I have not worked that specific detail out. I would imagine if the grant is awarded, they would then give you guys the money. Then I would hope, but I don't know if they're gonna hold back. You know, if they're gonna give their due diligence money first and then hold back on the settlement money till it, you know, actual settlement. But we would have all of that documented.
Okay.
And then again, you know, we Heritage is looking to front that 277.5 to the township, as long as we can get reimbursed, knowing that.
You use the word loan. What does that mean?
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure it out myself. It's something new that we've done. I can't imagine, you know, it was actually an idea brought up by the county, by Bill Hartman, who used to work for a land trust. And they said, you know, they used to have a fund where they could just kind of zero interest loan out, knowing they're getting repaid in a couple of months, just because a lot of these grant programs are reimbursement. So you've got to front the money, which is tough for anybody, any entity. But we want to make this thing work. So
yeah, I mean, my guess is whatever we agreed to would have to be hopefully blessed by our solicitor, right?
Right. Yes. Yeah. And like, you know, I know you guys have another meeting.
Day after election day.
Right, the 8th. I wanted to confirm that too, because I know the election day got moved around and wasn't quite sure, but I would certainly have the loan details worked out before then. So you're not going into that blind.
Yeah, yeah, our next meeting is on November 8th, but I also wanted to, you had the Open Space Committee also meeting on the 8th?
That's what the township calendar
their
says?
meeting was moved to the following week.
It was.
So their
Okay.
meeting, because our meeting is not normally on a Wednesday, they
Yeah.
moved their meeting to the following Wednesday, which would be the
Okay.
15th.
We just got to adjust the calendar.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I mean, they have already given their recommendation to the board. You know, a member of the committee is here if you want them to speak to that. But I mean, I don't know that another meeting of the Open Space Council is needed before your next meeting.
So what you have in front of you, the Open Space Committee did approve up to 75,000 just to try to accommodate the Yellow Book appraisal. So that's actually what would be in front of you. We would also, if the board wants to move forward on this, we would have the resolution done at that November 8th meeting, because they'll need that resolution also, much like we did with the DCNR grant too.
So what you're looking for tonight is an approval to allocate the funds from the Open Space Fund and then to approve the grant submission at our next meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
And for the township to serve as holder of the easement, which is a legal obligation.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we can serve as co-holder, and as I mentioned, we can work out monitoring details, but
The resolution will take care of the easement holder.
Yeah.
I assume, right? Yeah, so I'm looking really for approval to move forward with the grant, and then we'll button up with the resolution and stuff at the November 8th meeting.
So the past two applications were DCNR grants. And
Correct.
this one's with the other one. Is this a better fit, in your opinion, from what you're aware of it, or do we have less of a chance with this? This
I
one?
think we have a much greater chance because this, like I said, this is the first year that this federal program has opened up to municipalities. I know of one other property being applied to this program through the municipalities. He is already lining up several properties for next year.
Okay.
So I really think this is a home run. It just stinks that it took us so many tries to get to it.
Okay, and the map and the locations of the potential public access, all that has not changed since we've seen
No,
last? Okay.
no,
And then
nothing's
as
changed on
far
that.
as the punch list, due diligence items, those are all the exact same?
The only thing that changed was the yellow book appraisal as opposed to a normal appraisal. The yellow book would normally be 3,500, but they're offering to do it for $2,000 since we already did an appraisal with them. And then a slight uptick in the estimated phase one costs is the only change.
And which one of these due diligence items, where do they determine the PIND and the applicable PIND requirements, restrictions on the public access?
The trail, the PIND for the trail will have to be a completely separate, a completely separate effort by the township. What this grant would get us is the conservation easement on the property with language written in that permits the township to research and build a trail at a later date. But that could likely be a separate, a lot of times that's done as a separate trail access easement, and then part of, whoever the contractor is that you guys hire to build the trail would have to do the PIND review for getting all the way down to the river. I mean, they're going to want to look at, specs and engineering maps and things of that nature for that specific review. The PIND program has, like, if you can dream it on a property, they've got a review for it that's specific.
And just my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that this program is a federal U.S. Fish and Wildlife program.
Correct.
And it's a high priority, from my understanding, from what I've read. It's a fairly high priority, and they're trying their best to allocate, actually spend the money as opposed to retain it and be difficult about providing it.
Yeah, so there's as they explain it to me, this program allocates 2 separate funds to the 4 states. Each state gets its own kind of pet project fund, and then there is a more competitive multi-state fund that we would likely be applying to if it turns out that the state pet project fund has some money left in it. They might just get it into there to make sure it happens.
Okay, and just to follow up, I believe you said the bulk of the funds, the earliest we could probably expect those to be required is early summer to midsummer.
No, so
It could be, okay.
pretty immediately we're going to have to order the yellow book appraisal.
Okay.
And then we will work our way through this due diligence punch list.
Right.
And then come, ideally, summer would be the biggest expense.
Like the 270 or 250. Or
Right.
whatever it is.
Yeah. The
Okay.
actual closing. So yeah, and we would spend about 22.5 to get to closing, and then there's going to have to be 532 and change
Okay.
paid out at closing.
Yeah, but it's like okay. So at that point, and we would have in place, would have worked out with you if we needed this bridge loan to work that out well in advance, right? So,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, I mean, the agreement of sale would set a closing date and terms and all that stuff. So it wouldn't just be like, hey, I need $200,000 tomorrow.
Right. Okay. It's still the most, it was the most highly identified property in the township for preservation. So
Correct.
I mean,
So is there anything else from the board, or is someone ready to make a motion to provide the money for this grant?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still, if we do the 12.5%, does that take us out of any running on this? I mean, we had a long discussion about getting to that number, and I'm still okay on that number. So it's 69,000.
Yeah, the Open Space Board recommended 12.5% with a cap of not to exceed 75 even, understanding that the Yellow Book appraisal could change the valuation and thus the numbers up top.
Okay, I didn't
And
understand that.
it could be lower as well.
It could be lower, it could be higher, we don't know.
Okay.
I did some rough math, and right now the property's valued at 9,000 an acre. It could go all the way up to 9750, and you guys would, and that would be about where your part would be 75,000. So,
Follow-up question. So as far as the easement is concerned, we would be signing something if this all went through, saying that we would be holding this easement in perpetuity.
correct. Gets
And-
recorded with a deed at the county office.
And then if we elected to have an organization like yours help us monitor that easement, right? How would that happen? Is that like an endowment, like a one-time thing, or recurring cost, or?
Either. We have contracts with multiple townships currently to do monitoring on their eased properties, which really just involves our staff doing the site visits, producing the reports, but then it goes to the township to review and interpret and enforce if there is a violation. We can certainly give recommendations, but we have done that either through an annual contract with per property, a flat fee, or a upfront one-time payment.
But anything that you would do, or any other organization, would be, quote, a recommendation to us as far as enforcement.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately the township has.
As opposed to if you held the easement, and then, you could say, hey, Lower Frederick, you need to enforce this. Like when Natural Lands, when I talked to them about some other projects a couple of years ago, they're like, well, if we find something, you guys are going to have to enforce that. And I'm just trying, I'm not saying one way or the other, I just want to make sure I understand how it
legal
would work.
responsibility for enforcement, for violation enforcement and remedy lies with the township as holder, or would lie with township as holder. Whether or not the township chooses to act on that is a question for your solicitor.
Again, would someone on the board be prepared to move ahead with the resolution?
I'll make the recommended motion. Okay, let me see if I can put my words together in order. If that's acceptable to the rest of the board, that we move forward. Seems to be.
Okay.
I move to provide up to $75,000 to be paid from the Lower Frederick Township Open Space Funds to be applied for the total easement acquisition cost of the Barber property, 333 Salford Station, UPI number 38-00-02191-00-3 and number 38-00-02190-004 under the Highlands Conservation Federal Grant Program.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I have a question. Is it 12.5% up to 75?
No, it is up to 75,000.
Okay.
It
So-
could
so-
go up to that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got that.
Could.
Okay.
So the 12.5% under the original appraisal was the 69,000, and they
Right.
thought just in case it went up a little higher, they wanted to provide.
Okay.
So
Carry on.
as long as it doesn't go over 75,000.
A
that would be the
second.
Township.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so Supervisor Orff made the motion, Supervisor Byrd made the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, I will see you on the 8th.
All righty.
Great, thank you very much. Thanks, Phil.
Next item on the agenda is the fire company request for authorization to submit the LSA grant for fire engine purchase. And LSA stands for, what does it stand for?
Local share account application.
Thank you. Local share account.
So at the information gathering held on 10/10, the fire company asked the township to submit an LSA grant on behalf of them towards the purchase of a new fire engine. Dan, the Schwenksville Borough Manager, stated he had submitted and received this grant for the sidewalk road improvements they've been doing this past year and would help with the grant writing. The fire company would not be eligible to apply, which is why they need us to do the application for them. I offered no objection if it would help them, but would need board approval to proceed. This program is from the PA Horse Development and Gaming Act, Act 2004-71. It's amended, which provides for the distribution of gaming revenues through the Commonwealth Financing Authority to support projects in the public interest within the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. This would be an eligible use of the funds. The projects must have a total eligible cost of $25,000 or more, but not exceed $1 million for any project. Matching funds is not required for the program. We would need to do a resolution designating 2 officials to execute all documents. They provided a sample with those guidelines. This is another deadline of November 30th of this year. And we would be able to do that resolution at the November 8th meeting if the board authorized me to move forward with doing this grant application for the fire company.
Any questions from the board? Seems,
The only thing I just wanted to add to what Jason said, and maybe you said it, but do you remember approximately, I think the fire company estimated a new engine cost about $1 million?
I've got like 1.12 sticking in my head,
Yeah.
but I know I think
And their current engine is,
their current engine is a 99.
right.
So
So
they put a 20-year shelf life. So obviously they've surpassed that.
Just some background so people understand what we're thinking about.
all right, well, I would be happy to make that motion to authorize the township manager to submit a local share account application on behalf of Lower Frederick Fire Company for the purchase of a new fire engine. Do I have a second?
Chuck Yiser will second.
So Supervisor Hexter made the motion, Supervisor Yiser made the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. And I guess thanks to Schwenksville Manager for helping out on this.
Well, we'll see. No, Dan's a good guy, so.
All right, the next item is the authorization, another grant, lots of grants tonight. Authorization to submit a grant application to Pico Green Region Open Space Program.
So seemingly a glutton for punishment, I think. I wanted to present this to the board. It's a little backwards in the sense that I'm looking for approval to, if the board was interested in the grant, to without having a specific project, but because of the times constraints and there seems to be a lot of low-hanging fruit as far as what we might be able to use this for. I thought it would pertinent to put it on the board, the agenda tonight for you guys to take action on. I thought Park and Rec might have a project on the shelf to apply for it. This would be improvements to our open space properties, specifically looking at our parks. It's up to $10,000 and we would need to match funds because of the short window. I'm working backwards on this, as I said, to get board approval prior to finding a project for it. I've not yet sent anything to the Park and Rec board. If interested and we can find a smaller project, this project would be approved at the November 8th general meeting along with a resolution,
So,
which the Park and Rec board would have a meeting. They meet the 6th, so they would be able to meet prior to our next board meeting if they do have something.
so I was going to ask Jay, I want to make sure people can hear when talking. So if I understand correctly, I know Pam Reich had there's probably a portion of the larger program that she presented for Coble Park like maybe even just the leveling of that one ball field or something, that could come in at an appropriate price.
Yes.
Yeah. So that seems like they should be able to come up with something. So I think it's, yeah, anytime you can get 50% of something covered, that's a pretty good deal.
That's why I didn't want to pass up the opportunity.
Good find.
And I think Carol said she's worked with that. It looks relatively easy to apply for. So it's not, I don't think it's your typical, where you're basically submitting a book to get the grant. Becky and I kind of went through the online application and it seemed to be a little simpler than some other grants. So
just so I understand this, there's a grant program coming up with a short time frame. It's up to 10, so no more than $10,000. So it's
Correct.
a small amount with matching funds. And if we pre-approve it tonight, that would give the park board the opportunity to find something at that amount to apply for, but they are not required to do it. It just gives them the opportunity to do so.
correct. And then the
Okay.
board would approve that project or not approve at the November 8th meeting before we would submit
So
anything.
we're not committing to anything, we're just providing an opportunity to apply.
I'm looking for authorization to kind of move forward with it. I didn't want to present it to the Park and Rec Board and then the board say, no, we're not interested. So that was really, I was looking for if the board was interested or not.
Okay, well,
So this would be like more of a consensus than a motion type of thing.
okay, I mean, that seems like a good idea. I mean, then the ball's in their court, what they want to do with it, and then we'll consider it when they have a plan. What does the rest of the board think?
I concur. Yeah, sounds good.
So you've got consensus then?
All right.
So, Peter, we don't need to vote.
Now, I consensus is fine
Okay.
on this because you guys
Okay, cool.
will formally vote on any project at the November 8th meeting.
Okay, great. All right. The next item is the Saxon Sons, consider approval of the opinion and order for conditional use application. I'm going to pass that over to Peter.
Yes, so as we have done in the past, what I'll do is I'll read the decision and the conditions and then ask for a vote from the board. Obviously, Supervisor Sachs has recused himself from any participation in this matter. So here is the recommended order in regards to this conditional use application. And now this 24th day of October 2023, after due deliberation and discussion at a public hearing, the Lower Frederick Township Board of Supervisors hereby grants Saxon Sons the requested conditional use to disturb steep slopes upon the property as presented at the hearing, conditioned upon and in compliance with the findings of fact, discussion, and conclusions of law set forth in the attached adjudication, as well as the following. Number one, applicant shall install buffer plantings in a manner set forth in sections 145-42.c, 145-43, and attachment 4 to chapter 145 of the Lower Frederick Township Code in all areas. You want to, can you post, maybe put up, in all areas highlighted in green on the plot plan attached here to and incorporated herein as Exhibit A to this adjudication, which Jason is going to show. Applicant shall additionally not disturb any of the existing area marked as, quote, edge of trees and brush, end quote, along the eastern boundary of the use as shown on the plan. An additional entrance to the property shall be provided between landscape buffering as shown on Exhibit A to this adjudication. Number two, applicant shall install a fence 6 feet in height and permanent in construction along all areas highlighted in yellow on Exhibit A. The fence shall be constructed of a material or a combination of materials that shields outdoor equipment storage from view from the public right-of-way and neighboring properties. Number three, applicant shall ensure that the employee parking area is located beyond the parking setback line shown on the plan and Exhibit A to this adjudication. Number four, applicant shall file a land development application for the project and not request a waiver of land development. This land development application and the resultant plan shall show the consolidated Montgomery County tax map parcel numbers 38-00-00598-00-3, which is 1205 North Gravel Pike, and 38-00-00595-00-6, which is the property, meaning the subject property. Which consolidation shall occur with the recording of this land development plan. Number 5, applicant shall provide architectural characteristics and materials of the proposed storage garage, which shall include a stone facade facing on all facades in a style consistent with the adjacent CVS pharmacy located at 1206 North Gravel Pike. Number 6, applicant shall provide additional engineering to demonstrate adequate grading, stormwater management, and erosion control for the project to the satisfaction of the township engineer as part of the land development review process. Number 7, all proposed roads, drives, and parking areas shall be designed so that land clearing and or grading will not cause accelerated erosion. Vertical and horizontal alignment of any proposed roads, drives, and parking areas shall be designed so that hazardous conditions are not created. Number 8, applicant shall obtain any sewage disposal approvals required for the project as a part of the land development review process. Number 9, applicant shall comply with the landscape requirements of the subdivision and land development ordinance, specifically and without limitation, sections 145-42, 145-43, and attachment 4 to chapter 145 of the Lower Frederick Code. Number 10, applicant shall submit a lighting plan in compliance with the township code, which shall be subject to approval by the township engineer or a designee thereof. And number 11, applicant shall comply with all federal, state, and local laws, regulations, and ordinances applicable to this project. And that is the proposed order for this application.
Okay, so we need to vote to approve this. What are you looking for?
Yes, we need a public vote to approve it, and then it will be mailed out tomorrow to the
Okay.
applicant.
Yeah, before we do that, I want to thank the applicant for giving us an extension. We had some unintended delays after the original hearing, and that was very helpful. Any discussion from the board? And by the way, this was the topic of one of our executive sessions. Oh,
Motion? I can't find it.
which resolution is this? What number are we on?
2023 R-21.
21. All right. If there's no discussion, would someone like to make the motion? Okay, go ahead.
So I'll read this whole thing.
I can't
I
find
guess
it.
I think so.
And now, this 24th day of October, 2023, upon consideration of the foregoing findings of fact, discussion, and conclusions of law at a publicly advertised meeting of the Board of Supervisors of Lower Frederick Township, hereby conditionally grant Sachs & Sons the conditional use requested in the application to allow intrusions into and construction upon steep slopes as defined by the Lower Frederick Township zoning ordinance for the property located on 1207 Gravel Pike in the township, otherwise respectfully referred to as Montgomery County Parcel 38-00-00595-00-6, such grant being limited by, conditioned upon, and in compliance with the findings of fact, discussions, and conclusions of law set forth in the attached adjudication as read by our solicitor as resolution 2023 R-21.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second it. Supervisor Orff.
So Supervisor Yiser made the motion, Supervisor Orff made the second. All those in, sorry.
Public comment, perhaps?
Oh, sorry. Is there any questions or comments on this? Anyone on Zoom? No?
He's checking.
No.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. That's with 4 votes, and 1 supervisor has recused himself. That's Supervisor Sachs. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Now we're going to move on to the Doley Construction Release Number 6. So this is for a release of funds. It's payment number 6 in the amount of $320,998.35 to Doley Construction. This payment has been verified by our engineer. And we still have a 5% retainage. Is that correct, Carol?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct.
All right. Any questions about this from the board? Go ahead, Bob.
It's 5%. No, it's been 5%. The way the contract reads is consistent with state law, that once you get past the 50% mark in the contract, we can only withhold 5%. So we are withholding 5%, which is approximately $110,000 in retainer right now.
Thanks, Bob. Any other questions? All right. Then I will go ahead and make the motion to authorize the relief of funds for payment application number 6 in the amount of $320,998.35 to Doley Construction Corporation. Do I have a second?
I'll second. Dan Orff.
Thank you. Supervisor Hexter made the motion. Supervisor Orff made the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Now we have one item we would like to add to the agenda. So per the revision of the Sunshine Act in 2021, we need to vote first to amend the agenda, and then we can discuss and vote on the item. So you want to take that?
Yes, so the vote to amend the agenda would be to add a proposed change order 4, okay. Change order 4 for this contract with Doley.
Can one of you provide a little more detail on what we're looking for?
Okay, yeah, if you want it now, yes, obviously. So what we, as has been discussed in prior meetings, originally when this contract was bid out, we were only intending basically to undertake road repairs where the actual trenching took place within Fulmer Road, Riverside, Avenue B. It was discovered as the work proceeded that the condition of these roads was so poor that it really made no sense to just do that trench work. It was then decided to actually undertake a more robust repair and restoration of these roads. Because of the significant change in the contract, it was determined that this was something that needed to be taken out of the contract and rebid. Subsequently, the township decided to go the cooperative purchasing route, whereby we used KPN, the Keystone Purchasing Network, to meet these bidding requirements and undertake this work. In the meanwhile, we took all this trenching repair work out of Doley's contract. And since that point in time, Doley and the township have been in discussions, disagreements over what is the proper price adjustment due to the removal of this work. really, my understanding is, these discussions boil down to certain set costs that Dolly originally had spread over all the paving work. And now that most of it was taken away, they needed to then have these costs put into the remaining paving work. We had a disagreement about how much these costs were with Dolly. We've now have reached a tentative agreement with Dolly on a new change order, which would take out the remaining paving work that is still part of the contract. Therefore, Dolly would not have to worry about these remaining set costs. They're just being completely removed. This is something that just came up today as in a possible agreement and settlement of this issue. Due to the lateness in the year and weather and the fact that paving is very weather dependent, we don't, it's both Carol and my recommendation that the board actually approve this change order tentatively. Carol has yet to prepare it. We have yet to have Dolly sign off on it, but we need to get this all done prior to the next meeting, because hopefully we get the paving done prior to the next meeting. For that reason, we're asking the board to amend the agenda to add a authorization to Carol to prepare and have Dolly sign this change order as I've described. And that way we can move forward with Dolly being satisfied, and also then moving forward with using the equipment bid to get this paving done. Lastly but not least, there is still a few items on a punch list that Carol has provided to Dolly. Dolly has agreed that they will complete all these punch list items, which means once that is done and once the paving is done, we can have this system up and operational. We can start getting the residents to hook into the system, hopefully before the weather really turns on us. Carol, have I missed anything?
You've done an excellent job, Peter. You've summed it up very well.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So that being said, I'm looking for a vote to amend the agenda, and then looking for a vote to authorize Carol to prepare and have Dolly execute the change order as described.
Okay, so we need a motion to amend today's agenda to add this item for change order number 4 for Dolly Construction. For the public, within 24 hours, the amended agenda will be posted on the website, also per Pennsylvania Sunshine Act requirements. Do I have that motion to amend the agenda?
Chuck Yeiser will make the motion.
Do I have a second?
Dan Orff will second.
Thank you. Supervisor Yeiser made the motion. Supervisor Orff made the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. And now we need a motion to approve Carol drafting the change order for Dolly Construction and something else.
Would this motion also authorize us to work with a equipment bid contractor on this?
Yes, yeah, probably we should add that.
Yes,
And authorize, once Dolly signs the change order, authorize the signature by the chair, prior to the next meeting, so everything is locked up.
Okay, so how about if I just make that motion? So I move to allow Carol to draft change order number 4 for Dolly Construction, to have the chair sign that prior to the next meeting, and to allow the township to use the equipment bid to have Sachs & Sons do the paving work at the pump station.
Sounds good to me.
Thank you.
All right, do I have a second?
Chuck Yeiser will second.
Thank you. Supervisor Hexter made the motion. Supervisor Yeiser made the motion. Supervisor Yeiser made the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed?
I'll recuse myself.
Oh, thank you. And so Supervisor Sachs recuses himself. Any opposed? So that motion passes unanimously 4-0 with 1 recusal.
Thank you very much.
All right.
That is all I have.
Go ahead, Bob.
Bob Aaron's Road. So I'd like to refresh the board's memory brought to the board's attention, brought to Carol's attention, that the trench paving the road was going to fall apart and everything else, okay? Now, as Peter just gave his rendition of how that all transpired, and with the document that I was provided by a right to know request, earlier this spring, Carol said that her and Tommy walked the roadway and that the roadway had significantly changed since 2016. Well, obviously, before this went out to bid, we brought that to your attention. So since you've kindly amended the agenda for this evening, I'd like to request if the board would entertain it to put RFPs out for our professionals.
Oh, well, that's something that usually happens at our organizational meeting, but I think the board can consider that. I will just say we did just do that a couple years ago, but thank you for your suggestion, Bob.
Well, I think I talked to every single person on board except for Terry Bird. And I've talked to some of the possible new people that are running for supervisor, and everybody thought that it was a great idea to do that. Financially, responsibility would be needed as far as Jason doing the budget as well. I've already talked to Jason about this. Most of you know that I brought this up. Spoke to Mr. Geiser months ago, probably 7 months ago. So each and every month that I've been coming to the meeting, I've been waiting to bring this up. Tonight was the night to bring it up.
I don't believe I ever told you that I was willing to go and look at all our professional
No, you
agreements
told
again.
me you did not.
I told you that. I think I enumerated all the things that we've spent our time interviewing for in the last few years and kind of abruptly ended that conversation with you.
I think your actual
That's
comment
my
is,
recollection.
I've got 2 years left. I don't want to spend 4 months going through interviews and everything else. So, however it transpired, that there was other members of the board that I spoke to that were for having this done. So that's why I'm bringing it up to you this evening.
Thank you, Bob. All right. Next item, and sorry you had to wait, folks, the sewer easement agreement for 14 Springmount Road.
Let me just handle this just to explain it. This is an easement that's being granted to us unilaterally by the yachts. The township and the board don't need to do anything. You don't have to have a vote. You can have a vote to say, yes, great, we'll accept it. But it's not an agreement where they're signing it and we're signing it. This is a unilateral offer or declaration of them saying, here's our easement. This is required of them by DEP. It's not something that we were requiring from them, but it's being done to satisfy DEP's basically conditions to sign off on the sewer planning for their force main. I believe, if I'm right, Carol, this is the last step. Once we do this, we can finally get everything set up for the yachts, is it correct? If the board wants to have a vote and say, yes, we formally accept this easement, you certainly can, but it's not a requirement.
But do we need to just have consensus that we accept it?
That would work also.
All right, do we have consensus to accept the easement?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, okay.
So are the yachts in the audience?
Yeah.
Hello, guys. As soon as you get it signed and just turn it back to Jason, I'll get it recorded and we'll get DEP all happy with you guys.
If you have it, we'll sign it tonight, but we have a couple things that we'd like to bring up about the whole experience that we've had.
Do you want to hear this now or public comment?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, you've been waiting.
My name is Elmarat.
He's the property owner.
I'm the property owner. This is my daughter. She's been handling the whole thing for me because it's way over my head. So this is my daughter Jeannie, and she'll take care of what has to be done.
We just have a couple questions. The application was submitted July 11th. Checks were cashed in August. We were told when we submitted the application that checks would not be cashed until we received the permit. What is the reason that checks were cashed? My father has lost money and interest in his checking account since August until we received this permit. I had spoke with Jason previously and told him if it was only going to be another week or two, that's fine. It has been a month since I spoke with Jason. Where is the money coming for this? Second thing is the additional fees for this easement. This easement should have been done previously when it was put in Donna and Jeff's property for them to receive their permit. Is this going to be a recapture back to my father and a percentage paid by the IRIX? And if the other home does go into getting the sewer put in, who's paying my father back? Since we had to pay to have Donna and Jeff's put in their percentage to have it attached. Will there be a recapture added to that for us?
Sorry to interrupt you. Would you like those questions answered before you go on? Would that be easier?
That would be fine.
Okay, so that's 2 questions. Who can take those?
Yeah, I can deal with the recapture.
Okay.
As with the IRIX, we could put together a recapture agreement, but you're gonna spend more on the recapture agreement than you'd recapture. So it's kind of spending good money after bad. As for why this easement was not required when the IRIX first put it in, I cannot answer that. That was certainly a question I had when someone sent it to me, and I was like, oh, okay. I don't know if it was a situation where originally the force main wasn't expected to go over this little corner of your property, and then when they actually installed it, it did, and DEP then said, hey, wait a second, after the fact. That very well could have what happened. I don't know, I'm just guessing. But yes, we could do a recapture for you, but for such a small amount, I don't think it would really work.
Okay.
So,
That'll be something my father will have to decide whether he wants to move forward with or not.
yes. And we can certainly offline have further discussions about that and how, what might be the best way for you and your father to deal with that issue.
Okay. And I had also spoken with Jason, and I'm still looking for the breakdown of the recapture costs for what we paid out to the IRIX. We were given an amount from John Moroskovich, who is going to be our plumber, which he's waiting to retire. He's waiting on us to be able to retire and move to New Mexico. As I had stated to Jason previously, if this falls into where they are not able to bore the ground because of freezing, he is talking of retiring as of January. Are we going to have to resubmit an application, or is information going to be just shifted over to the new plumber? Okay. Okay, and we would also like copies of all the agreements with signatures on them from the township. So that way we can keep them in our file. So that way, if the house does get sold, we can then hand them over to the new owners, because I've been waiting with my father to be able to put the house up for sale, and we cannot do that until this is all settled, because we would have lost buyers on the house because they would not have waited this long for this.
As to the last question, at least as to the grinder pump operation agreement.
Yes.
And this easement, once they're recorded, my office will send them directly to you. You will have a fully signed copy that's been recorded with all the recording information.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, and, go ahead. Do you want to, can you come to the microphone, please? Thanks. Welcome back.
So this is our recapture agreement with the township. And while I was helping Jeannie
Sorry,
find some dates.
Donna Lynn Irick.
Donna Lynn Irick, 167 Ruth Road, Hardeeville.
Thank you.
So while I was helping Jeannie find
Sorry,
some dates.
can you pull the mic down a little bit? People can't hear you. Sorry, modern technology.
So this is a paragraph within the recapture agreement. And within this paragraph, we are known as the developers. So it does say within 30 days of receipt of a tapping fee containing a reimbursement payment concerning the facilities, township shall notify developers by certified mail to developers' last known address and reimbursement payment. Well, they cashed the checks as of August, and we have not received any emails, certified letters. If we wouldn't have such a close relationship with the OTS, we would not know that anybody was tapping in to that pipe. So this is almost like a breaching contract with the township because we were not notified that anything was happening with the main.
This was last summer? Or this summer?
Thank you for letting us know.
Mhm.
I'll have a discussion with the township staff and emphasize what needs to be done.
Okay.
I think what you all have to realize is you're looking at 1/3 of the administrative staff here.
Mhm.
And so it's a lot of work for 3 people to do. And we're sorry if it was an oversight. It certainly wasn't done on purpose. It was, we've had a great working relationship with you guys. I think we've had a good relationship with the OTS. This is an oversight on our part, and we'll take care of it.
Okay, great.
All right?
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you all have any other questions about this? Any more questions? Well, thank you for coming, and hopefully everything will go smoothly from here on in. I know, fingers crossed, right? Okay, the next item is Montgomery County Agricultural Land Preservation Board request regarding 8 Sep Road. Do you want to talk about that, and then I can make some comments?
So I received this request from the county on October 5th. It's for the Lieben Farm of 38 acres at 8 Sep Road. This was presented to our Open Space Committee at their 10/11 meeting. They voted to recommend the township contribute $15,000 out of the Open Space Fund. It is my understanding the township has not contributed to the ag preservation in the township before. The county is asking for a contribution of 15% of the cost, or $45,600. $15,000 is 4.93% of the overall cost. We're not obligated to contribute if the board chooses not to. We would need to respond via resolution by 10/31/2023. The contribution would not be paid until 2024.
So I just want to make a couple comments. I am a member of the Montgomery County Farm Preservation Board, and this is standard practice for the county to ask the municipality in which the property is to make a contribution towards the easement for farm preservation. They are looking for something up to 15%. There is no requirement to contribute 15%. We have preserved 2 farms in the recent past. We have not, the township has never donated anything towards farm preservation. Since I am a member of the Farm Preservation Board, I will not be voting on this. I will recuse myself.
And Supervisor Worth, I know that the Open Space Committee recommended $15,000 from the Open Space Fund, but to show that our township is serious, not that not giving a donation wouldn't mean we weren't serious about preserving open space, but in some minor survey of our neighboring communities, most of them do make a reasonable, or our contribution within the range of about 10%, not 5% of the 15% ask. I think I actually think we would be better off making a donation, a contribution of they have a 15% is $45,600. So I think a $30,000 contribution would be more appropriate, along the line of 10% of the total cost of the property. I think preserving farmland and sending a message to the county that it's something that this township is very interested in is an important message to send. And I think going a little bit closer to their actual ask in percentage is something that would benefit the township, just from the fact that we do care and we're interested in preserving farms in this township when they become available. And this is a really important farm because it actually connects one set of currently preserved farms to another collection of farms, which I believe that some of those individuals have interest in preserving their property. So I think sending a positive message through a 30, and maybe we can take 15,000 from the open space and 15,000 from general funds. I don't know if we're allowed to do that. But that would be my recommendation. Is I think this is definitely something we should do, and I think we should go with 30,000 instead of 15.
Yeah, so I definitely agree that it's a good program. The other two farms that Marla did mention that have been preserved or in the process of preservation the last 3-4 years, one was in the height of COVID. They didn't even send letters out to townships asking for money, and another one, the process kind of drug on for so long that we kind of missed that cycle. So this is actually, I think, the first time, I believe, that we're being asked for a donation. The program's great. So, we talked about the Barber property earlier. Lots of township discussions had to happen, lots of professional services, paying for consultants on this program. It's the landowner, works with the county. They work through the assessment. They work through the appraisal. Everything's done at the cost of the county and the state. They bring it to us, very little overhead. So I really like this program. I think 10%'s reasonable for this. I'm fine with all open space if that works. And I think we should commend the landowners in this case, in all cases that have preserved farms in our township, for their sacrifice, for basically taking value off of their farm, but understanding the importance of preservation. So I'm okay with the 30, all from open space, is my opinion.
Okay.
Anything from other members of the board? No, sorry.
I agree with everything Mr. Byrd just said.
Terry, do you have any comments?
I agree with it. I preserved a big chunk in this township. So to me, I feel that to preserve more ground is free, especially if it's farm ground. So I agree with it.
Yeah, and I think even though you're divided by a road, technically, this is your neighbor. I think part of this farm is your neighbor across the street.
Yes, it would be right across.
Yeah, even though it's corners touching, it counts as connected farms, and that helps the rating for the farm that we're talking about tonight. So
I just have a question. Since the Open Space Committee recommended 15, does the board have the authority to increase that amount? Okay, that's a yes.
They just recommend.
All right. So since I brought up the numbers, should I make the resolution or the motion? What's the number?
What was the last one?
So this should
It's
be
22.
22. I move to adopt Resolution 2023 R-22, committing a contribution of 30,000 of the agricultural easement purchase price out of the Township Open Space Fund for the farmland property located at 8 Sepp Road.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
So Supervisor Orff made the motion, Supervisor Byrd made the second. Again, I will be recusing myself. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously with 4 votes, and Supervisor Hexter has recused because I am a member of the Montgomery County Farm Preservation Board. Thank you. All right. Next item looks a little simpler. Office 365 Township server purchase. We talked about this recently.
Which apparently it looks like I left the invoices out of the packets. At the previous board meeting, the board directed me to secure updated quotes so that we might move forward with the migration to the cloud server and also the Office 365 Exchange move. The 2 quotes that I have amounts for on your summary page are the updated quotes to get us to move forward. And then I also noted what our 365 licensing amount per month would be. So I would just be looking for authorization for, I put a not to exceed $6,000, which covers these 2 invoices.
So is that the total cost, including the monthly fees?
That's not including the monthly fees. That's going to be an added on once we're migrated. They did say we may not be all up and running by the end of the year, but I think as you guys, Terry said, you know, getting started sooner, because I know the police, I got another reminder by Sergeant Cass that their outlook is, what, 92% full?
94.
94 now. So they're struggling. So my hope would be the 365 migration. The cloud may take a little bit longer. I've not done the migration for as far as the server goes, but this will allow us to get started.
And then all the emails will migrate over as well.
Yeah, and then I will I'll transfer this into next year's budget and appropriately as far as the monthly cost.
So the monthly, just looking at your invoices, $165 for the software and $92 for the cloud backup.
Yes. Which I think is better than what we had at Springfield, and I think we had about almost very close to the same amount of emails.
Any discussion from the board?
I just had a question on one of the invoices.
Yes.
So this is from the Ridge Support. I know the first invoice has to do with migration. That's a little shy of $2,000.
Yes.
And then the second invoice looks like it's for some hardware, is it? Is there a computer involved and a monitor, or what's that?
That's part of the cloud. That's part of their migration. That was on that migration to the cloud server invoice. So because they updated, I'm assuming they need that to get us migrated.
They need to get a computer. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. That's all I had.
I'm relying on them for that. We're not getting it. It's not something because we left any other PCs or anything for staff off that. So that's something they specifically need for the migration.
Yeah, I mean, if we're using some of these technologies, we may be able to get away from Dropbox.
Potentially,
because
yes.
there's over Azure. It's like kind of like OneDrive you can do locally.
That'll be a learning process because I haven't had the opportunity to use OneDrive because I wasn't at Springfield long after we got it, so we didn't really try to implement it. But
I'm just bringing that up. There may be an opportunity to get rid of Dropbox. For a little money.
I'd be okay.
Any other questions from the board? Are we ready to vote on this?
Sure.
Would someone like to make the motion to authorize this?
Sure. I move to
ahead.
authorize the migration to a cloud server and Office 365 Exchange move for the township staff to be done by Ridge Support Technologies at a cost not to exceed $6,000, and further authorize the township manager to sign any paperwork to complete the project.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Chuck Geiser will second.
All right, so Supervisor Byrd made the motion, Supervisor Yiser made the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
All right, now, reserved dormant EDU policy draft discussion. Do we have any additional information on this since the last time?
I do. I also can say this is going to be kind of an ongoing project. There's definitely a few rabbit holes to try to chase, but let me share my screen here.
Now, I have an old version from our first discussion that has a red markup. Is this
So,
new? What
Yep,
is the new version?
this is the new cleaned up version, because I know
Okay.
you guys, the board,
Yeah, our comment was there was too much red to
Yep.
make sense of it.
yep, the
Okay.
board had talked about that
Got it.
before, so I integrated all of Peter's changes and one of actually Carol's for the EDU discussion. So at the last time we talked about this, Chuck asked to try to do like a chart. I don't know if this is what you were looking for. I've tried to kind of, I guess, piece together information wise based on the properties that would be impacted or that we currently have eyes on or confirmation as far as what this policy would, that falls under this policy. So I don't know if this is something that you were thinking about, Chuck, when you asked for kind of a chart, or is there something, or was there something?
Well, I think we were trying to gauge the impact of
Mhm.
what we were doing to see whether there's only a handful of situations or whether this is dealing with a more widespread thing.
So I kind of put them into three components, which would be the property situation number one, which is not hooked up, because that could include a house on it. It's not necessarily an empty lot. Property situation number two, which is the dormant, which would be the situation where either a house was demoed or the house is in a state of repair. But whatever's no one's residing in the house utilizing the sewer. And then the situation number three, which was the donated EDUs, which would be the EDUs that were utilized as part of a easement agreement. So where we're at now, and I think I talked to you guys before. I mean, I'm going deep into the archives to try to locate paid tap-in fees. I found 15 properties that I have found tap-in fees paid where they are not paying the quarterly sewer rent charge. So this does consist of mostly properties that were never hooked up, or I feel like there was one property that kind of was in between. So that was up from, I did find a couple of more of the Cemetery Lane properties, because as the board may recall, that was one of the ones that the board took a decision on, I think in 2018, somewhere in there. So I did find two more of those and was able to confirm those from the archives with the property folders. So, and then as far as the truly dormant, I have found a handful more of those where tapping fee was paid. It was on the system at some point and it was taken offline for, like I said, either the house has been demoed, a fire, and this is a situation where those property owners have been paying the quarterly sewer charge. So that amount would be the amount that we're getting for those properties where currently those EDUs aren't being used. Now I can say one of the properties would be 323 Main Street, which I know is on the market. They finished their remodel, but that had two EDUs, and I believe that was empty for almost 12 plus years from what I understand. So I did have that on there because I was trying to, give the board an idea of the, I'm still kind of in search of those type of situations. We've come up with what we think is a good list. But that's going to be part of the, that's going to be kind of part of the continued kind of research, because we almost in some cases have to go property, because we don't necessarily, we can't always be sure necessarily when a property may be empty.
So if we can just summarize this, I'm going to start with the last column. That is, that's a value of EDUs that the township has donated.
Yes, so that's the current
So-
tap-in fee with the amount of, yes.
So that's not actual money, it's the value of the township.
That would be the value. That's why I put that's why I put current value for
Okay.
that
And for number
row
2, that is how much the township currently gets
per year. Yes,
from these dormant properties.
correct.
And then column 1 are properties that have paid a tap-in fee. Now, for Cemetery Road, that would only be about $1,000.
Correct. Most of them are 1,500. There was some 5,000. There's a couple of 150 like from the original, but
And how many of those have the potential to hook up in the near future? And I mean, I don't want to literally know how many, but percentage-wise, are half of them never going to hook up? Or 75, I mean, the ones on Cemetery Road will probably never hook up. I don't think the sewer is going to go up Cemetery Road.
Cemetery Road would be the outlier in regards to the other EDUs. That really would be up to the property owner.
But they potentially could hook in, is what I'm saying. They're close enough.
They're within the system.
They're within the system, so they could potentially hook
Yeah,
in.
so the Cemetery Lane are the only properties that I've found that currently do not have sewer,
Access.
that have sewer access.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. All right.
And how many of those? Do you remember?
2. There was a total of 3, but like I said, the board has already made a decision a few years ago on the one.
All right, so out of the 15 that you show in that first column, 13 of them
Would be with, yep,
could conceivably connect if they chose to.
correct.
I mean, there's a sewer line close enough they could do that.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Most of it's we do have a situation where there's multiple EDUs, so obviously that'd be a different kind of development. But yes, they're within where we have public sewer currently.
So what I'm hearing from this is the ones we probably should focus on the most is the property situation number 2.
I think it's a combination in a sense, because we do have these EDUs that have been hanging out there, some for decades. I'd say property situation 1 and 2. I think the property situation 2 is more maybe immediate, because that's having a current financial impact on those property owners that are paying those current fees and that are not utilizing the sewer. So I'd say might be like a 1 and 1A, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So then with this, my hope was that if the board so choose, we could start actually hitting the policy, unless the board wants more time to kind of digest the cleaned up version of the policy. Or I should say with kind of the information that I've found so far. I mean, I don't know how many more properties I'm going to find. Like I said, I've been doing this at night, watching the football games and baseball in front of the TV. So I've got Mattiolas that only give me the lot. So there's going to be some connection. I've talked to Becky already. So we're going to have to connect some of the like Cedar Hill and Springmount when those were purchased. I got lot numbers and a last name, and so that's going to take a little more cross. And then so there is some work to do, but my belief would be most of what we had already found prior to me kind of digging into the archives. I've only found a handful of new situations.
So one of the big decisions I believe that we've talked about that we need to just see where we land on it, and it would cover situations 1 and 2 would be they've paid a tapping fee. So it's not going to cover donated EDUs. They've paid the tapping fee. they're either paying it quarterly and there's not a building there, or they just never started paying them. If we are open to a service charge, whatever you want to call it, at a discounted rate that's legally allowed, wouldn't all of these then fall into one bucket? They pay the tap-in fee, they pay a quarterly or an annual fee to keep the EDU, whether there's a time period or not. I think we could truncate them all into one bucket. So is that just the direction that we need to give Jason of we're okay with that and what's legally allowed to be the minimum and maximum of that fee?
Yeah, I think what the draft proposes, and this is just a starting point, is a not to exceed 25% of the current rental, which would be not to exceed $200 a year. And so what we're looking to do is to come up with a policy that makes consistent policies in the past that have been ad hoc, that have been one thing for this person, another thing for that person, another thing for the other person. We've got all these different situations now coming forward saying, hey, why am I paying this? Why am I paying this? So I think what the policy proposes is we give these residents a time period and say, hey, you know, for a notional fee, you can hold on to your tapping fee, you can hold on to your connection if after 2 or 3 or however many years we come up with, you decide either you want to connect or you don't want to, then that would be an opportunity they could take.
Mhm.
And then we wouldn't continue to have these situations where folks have been handed something in the past and they're paying or they're holding on to an EDU and maybe they don't want it and they just want to, you know, let it go, or maybe they want to connect. I just have one request though for this draft. Can we please spell out EDU at the outset? Somewhere on the first page.
Yeah, it can be part in the definition section.
Okay, great.
I agree with what Supervisor Byrd said, that I think, you know, one solution will basically take care of both of those buckets, if you will. I mean, you know, people do have a reserved EDU and we're keeping the system up and running and maintaining it so that whenever they decide to hook up, it's ready to go. So they should be paying some amount of money to stay in there.
Guess the only,
I would agree with that too. If somebody has a house that was tore down and they have a lateral out there, or they paid for the hookup, they should pay a percentage. And that's what the law reads, with, that you only pay a percentage. And they should be able to keep that as long as they want to keep it. That's bull saying 3 years, you either get rid of it or, that's not right. They paid for it, they should pay that percentage of what the law reads on for sewer connections, if you're not using it. Not the full amount like people are paying.
how do we, I know this isn't a present day situation, but assuming there's no further there'll be a point in time where do we make sure that we hold off the reserve capacity to take care of however many people choose to retain their EDUs in the plant? I mean, if based upon if we're going to allow them to retain these indefinitely, we're going to have to make sure that we hold on to capacity for those individuals in the event that they choose to turn them on. Correct?
Yes.
So that's something we have to factor in. Right now, there's, if I have this right, something like 30 people holding these, or 30 EDUs sitting out there for which people could pay us money to retain them, right? I think, so far, I think I got the math right. So if we have them pay this yearly or monthly fee, to retain that, I think we would have to retain capacity to accommodate them in the event that they choose to connect. So we'd have to build that into whatever document we write up, because, you know, although that causes some problems, if I understand things correctly, because you can be forced by the DEP to hook up, right? Isn't it happened sometime in the Swanksville borough system? People have been basically told they have to, yeah, Swanksville's got to let them tie in even if they don't have the capacity.
Yes, yeah, if it's an occupied home and they have a failing system that's causing issues, I've seen that happen elsewhere. One of the reasons, going back to Supervisor Sachs' comments, one of the reasons why the proposed 3 years were put in there was you didn't want a bunch of, people just hanging on to them, and all of a sudden, if we get to the point where we have a bunch of people who want to hook in, but we don't have the capacity because everyone's reserved it, that can cause issues and cause problems. So that was the reason for the 3 years. But there's no requirement that's just a suggestion that I made in my changes. There's no requirement that be followed. If you wish to allow them to keep it forever and then just keep billing them at a reduced rate, that's certainly another option to go that way. But my suggestion in putting the 3 years in is that you don't want someone just hanging on to it when we have, if we get to the point where we have other people, other developers who are like desperate to hook into our system, we can't because we don't have the capacity.
I'm just curious, what would be the reason why someone would want to hold on for more than 3 years? I mean, what's a better time? 5 years? Like, why would someone want to hold on for 5 or 10 years?
So I just want to note for the dormant EDU, which most of these would apply, we didn't put there's not a time limit put on it. It was just for when there's a reservation fee, which normally, at least with the authorities that I looked at, those were authorities that were getting close to capacity. So I believe the dormant fee we didn't put a time limit on the dormant fee. It pretty much, as long as whatever the set rate that the board chooses is paid, you can keep that for at least the current draft. You'd be able to keep that EDU as long as you wish to.
So this would argue against putting them in the same bucket if we decide to go that direction. Yeah, okay. So number 2 could be as long as they wish, and number 1 we could put a time limit on. Yeah. So for number 2, we could let them keep it as long as they wanted, and number 1, we could put the time limit on.
That's what how it's written now, yes.
Does that make sense, Terry? Okay.
As a possible alternative, let's say we do put a 3-year time limit on it, but they can extend it by 3 years if they make a request to the township, otherwise it expires. And that way if somebody wants to drop out of the program, they can, but if they want to continue on, they have the option to. That way you'd probably, that takes care of, it puts the onus of responsibility on them to notify us that they still want to continue in the program, as opposed to us having to keep possibly people we can never find for properties that, could become abandoned, and us have no way to retrieve the EDU, if you follow me.
So how does the board want to proceed? Do we want to continue discussing this or absorb some of this and continue it at another meeting?
Option 2, absorb and continue in another meeting.
Anyone else? We're just going to let the board finish and then we'll go to the public, if that's okay. We haven't decided anything. We're just going to decide if we're going to continue discussing this tonight or if we're going to continue the discussion at a later meeting.
I mean, I guess we're kind of mixing things up a little bit because when we're talking about a EDU reservation fee is different than somebody who's already paid the tapping fee, right?
Yes.
So there's a couple different things floating around here that are kind of getting commingled. Well, I mean, it's all in this, I was reading here on this. Page 3 of 8, under the section 3 EDU reservation fee. So they're getting a reservation certificate, but they're not paying the 7405.
No.
Right.
The way I look at the difference between a dormant and a reservation is if you have, and we don't have this situation now, but there are, I've been in townships where the capacity of the local, sewer, either conveyance lines or treatment plant, you're right up to the point where they're about to be, cap out. So, if you're going to be building, a house in the next couple of years, you might want to lock down that EDU to make sure that once you get everything lined up, you got the financing, you got your builder, you got your plans, and you're ready to actually pay for the EDU, pay the tapping fee, it's there, and you haven't done all this work, and all of a sudden you can't build because there's no sewer capacity. That's the way I look at the reservation, is to kind of nail it down early on to make sure, okay, I don't do all this other work, spend all this other money, and then be told, sorry, we have no capacity for you.
So the reservation is not anywhere in any of those three
No,
columns. That's
no.
column 4. There
Yes.
was one.
And that's,
Yeah.
and I added that because
Yep.
I've seen it in many other places, and I've seen it work well in many other places. And it was just something, and then looking at other policies had it, I thought it was something that was missing from the original draft.
So to get back to where we were, the question to the board is, do we want to treat the people in the center column there, column 2, in a manner similar to this reservation fee, meaning that there's a time period that they need to act on these dormant EDUs? Is that, or no, it's the not hooked, column 1, I guess, would have the time period, right?
In some ways, yes. Or you like suggested, you could treat all the people who are column 1 and column 2 basically all as dormant, as is currently discussed in this, in this proposal.
But if I understand this correctly, the EDU reservation fee refers to a potential future need. It's not a current need because we currently have capacity. So we're talking about a situation that could occur in the future.
Well,
Because we don't
yeah, by
currently have-
definition,
no one has a
you're
reservation
reserving
fee.
capacity for a
Right,
future
but
need.
no one
yes.
is currently doing this, is what I mean.
No.
So this is planning for the future in the situation where hypothetically our sewage plant would be near capacity, like in Schwenksville Borough, and a developer is thinking, oh, I want to put up 100 houses in 5 years, I'm going to reserve 100 EDUs. So I
Yeah,
have
that could be
capacity.
it, yes.
So this is a hypothetical future situation we are
Right.
planning for.
Yes.
Okay,
We were looking for a complete policy.
gotcha.
So that way,
Okay.
we don't have to, we won't have to revisit it, and it kind of checks the boxes for these situations.
I mean, I guess maybe a fair way to treat it would be, for columns 1 and 2, column 3 is that's a whole separate set aside. That was a separate deal. It's not going to get affected by any of this, is my understanding. But for 1 and 2, these are people who are already in the system. If they want to pay some amount of money to stay in the system forever, that's fine. But anybody who's new coming in, then they would do this reservation fee thing, right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
And therefore, that would have that time period. But these people came into the program with an understanding that they bought that EDU, it's theirs till whenever. So we shouldn't change that.
Unless they choose to opt out.
Oh, yeah, of course. yeah.
So we're going to give them the option to opt out.
Yeah.
And, but either way, instead of paying the full rental fee, they will pay a percentage.
Yeah, I mean.
That
this-
will be the difference.
They'll still
Okay.
pay something. Because again, we're keeping that system up and running, ready to go for them to hook
Right.
up whenever they decide to.
The other positive too for column one, and that's what the challenge that we have is they're not in the system anywhere. I mean, I'm fine, I was able to find a handful through QuickBooks. Everything else I'm pulling the old ledgers to try to determine who paid a tap-in fee and whether that property was ever hooked up. So the reservation, it gives us more of the visibility. Now, that being said, I am creating kind of a all-encompassing document for this, but that also gives us the visibility that we haven't had and the board hasn't had for years as far as where these EDUs are at that maybe were purchased at, because that'll be part of the ongoing project part of this. Because once again, there's some situations where I may have to, I don't even know if the address that was written on the card may or may not have been correct, because I mean, in some cases, if there's not a house on it, I don't know how you're getting an address. Generally, addresses don't get issued till there's a building permit, so that you don't have empty lots with addresses so there's those situations, or one thing that I've discovered where there was an EDU purchased or a tap-in fee purchased, and did the township allow that to get combined with a neighboring property, like especially with where we have our commercial district and stuff. So that's kind of where it's going to take that much more time to kind of investigate.
Okay, so again, does the board want to continue this discussion?
Yeah, and I guess a question, if we are taking 1 and 2 and considering a reduced fee, service fee, whatever we call it, I mean, it's my opinion, but it's only my opinion that we wouldn't need a reservation fee bucket then. They could pay a tap-in fee and then enter into a service fee, paying into it. So I think that section, I'm glad Chuck pointed it out, but it's my opinion that just makes it more complicated for whoever's managing it at that time. If they're concerned about capacity, some future date, they can pay the current tap-in fee and then pay a reduced rate until they're ready to flow any products through our system.
I mean, it's something that could occur down the road, but a future board could always decide if they get close to do the reservation fee.
Sure.
Right.
But until then, I just would rather not create another bucket
Yeah.
to manage. Let's just keep it simple. We'd end up with people who've paid for EDUs and people who we've donated an EDU for other reasons, and that's it.
Okay, so do you want to continue this discussion at the next work session?
Sure.
And Peter, if people have any comments or changes, should they email them to you, or do you all want to just,
That would be great, yes.
okay. All right, questions, go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, Bob Burns, Zieglerville Road. Warren asked me to come up and let everybody know that you need to really speak into the mics because he
Okay.
can't hear. He couldn't even hear me, so obviously the new mic is different. But on the topic you were just talking about, I've been asking you guys, I can't even count how many years it's been, and I wasn't prepared to discuss this tonight, so I might be a little off on what I'm saying to you. The tapping fee, the current tapping fee is $7,405.26. Okay, that's made up of 3 different parts: component A, B, and C. And I believe component A is the reservation fee portion of that. And I've asked since way back when Mr. Weiner and Ted Goldthorpe, or whatever his name was here, that when these new developers come in, I even asked Peter at the last one, I believe Shahaki or whatever, that, we get some payments, if they have 44 houses, they get 11 a year or whatever they want to do. Let's pay it up front. Let's have the money, sitting in our fund, waiting for them to do what they need to do. So, I mean, it helps us in other ways. So it sounds like you guys are a little confused about the reservation fee portion of it, whether that's part of component A or something else. So maybe you're not, maybe I'm confused, but every time we talk about this EDU, to get to that factor, it's based on, Carol might be able to help me. It was either 249 gallons, 277 gallons. I think it's 277 times the rate gets you to this, with those three, A, B, and C, gets you to that total. And that's what Mark had given to me when I asked him way back when. So I believe there is, Peter, you mentioned, you called it a tapping fee. You called it an EDU fee, Chuck. I believe, isn't there another fee like $235? Is that the plumber fee?
Not that I know.
$7,400 is just for your tap-in fee to the township. The
Right.
plumber has to do his own.
Correct.
Okay, that's all separate.
Okay.
Any permits are separate.
Right.
Okay? That's not, all that is for you to hook up.
But the 7405, Terry,
Is
it's
for
based
you
on
to
those
hook up.
three, it's on those three columns. So if you're going to go tie in, you need to pay that money up front, that whole
These
figure.
three columns,
No, I don't know what, I can't even see what he's got over there. But not on those three columns, no. When you go to the sewer district number 25, for second class township code, it'll explain it all. So,
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Diane, did you have a question? Sorry, Diane, did you have a question? You'll have to remember to come up close to the microphones.
Actually, it's more just a
Sorry,
situation.
Diane Jurin?
Diane Jurin, Zieglerville Road. So this happened to my father a long time ago. He knew that a development was going to go in the farmer's field. He bought the tap-in fee at the fee it was, waiting the 7 years, I think it was, to then hook up. Because it was a lower fee, and he didn't ever have to pay anything. That's just one experience. My husband and I have actually been thinking about, since we're on the new Act 537 plan, and it's going to be a lot of money all at once, should we buy a tap-in fee now to spread our cost? But if I hear you saying that you have to then keep paying a quarterly fee, that might not be a smart thing to do. Just thinking that, if the tap-in fee goes up, it's going to be 10 years. Carol's been very upfront about that. Will that tap-in fee go up in year 10? And we wished we would have bought it now. That's all. I just wanted to give that. You don't
Okay.
have to answer any.
I don't think any of us can see the future, but thank you. Any other questions from Zoom on this topic? Nope. Okay, so should we continue this at our next work session? Is that acceptable?
Yeah, that's fine by me. The only thing I would perhaps want to ask is, we talked about a percentage, right? If you could give us a recommendation of what percentages we might want to be considering, right?
I think you proposed something like 25%, or not to exceed 25%. Okay. All right, the next item on the agenda is the Smith Trail easement discussion. Who's going to lead that? Is that going to be Peter, or? Is that yours, Peter?
His letter's not in the packet though, right? Do you? Okay.
And is there a decision
No, 'cause
required
I don't
today?
have
Or
anything, the one I got doesn't have anything under this. Yeah. I'm sorry, just the packet I got didn't have anything on this particular item. So, but we can go through, the town, the Smiths forwarded the letter, was it 16th? A letter October 10th to the townships, formally offering the township a trail easement over some property located at, the street address is 3 South Ryan Ford Road. The Smiths, set forth a set of basically conditions on the actual easement. I think the board needs to look at these conditions and decide whether or not that's something that the township is willing to comply with. And if not, I think you should let the Smiths know, saying, hey, we have an issue with this. I have gone through all these conditions and have, a set of comments to them. In general, just my comments are, I think it's not fair, especially in a township of this size, to set up something where we're gonna have a whole bunch of different conditions for this little area of trail that's different than everyone else. And, if you magnify or multiply that by, if we get a bunch of other donations and each has their own set of conditions, for the staff to try to remember, oh, well, for this area, we got to do X, Y, and Z. For that area, we got to do A, B, and C. For that area, we got to do 4, 5, and 6. It's just too confusing. So my general just comment on this proposal is, where the Smiths are saying, hey, we want you to follow this specific requirement as far as the maintenance of the trail goes, it's got to be something where I think the township needs to say, okay, fine, but we're going to apply that across the board, because it just won't be fair to township employees to try to remember that there are some special circumstances here, and which don't apply to everyone else, because I can guarantee you over time it's going to get forgotten. Not intentionally, but just, things get busy. You get new people in who, don't realize, oh, we got to treat this area differently than everywhere else. So my caution is just in general, try to keep the easement simple, and keep the requirements basically the same as we do everywhere else, uniformity. In my experience, a lot of the things placed that the Smiths are talking about, I don't normally see in these sorts of easements. The easements are much more, simple in general. It's a provision granting an area of land that's in the future is allowed, the township is allowed to put a trail through. There's indemnity provisions, obviously the township indemnifying the property owner, holding harmless the property owner. The township saying, yeah, we're responsible for, putting the trail in sometime in the future. Generally, the township isn't obligated to put the trail in. They can put it in, but they don't have to. If a trail is put in, the township's obligated to maintain that trail, but following its own rules and requirements. So that's just my general feelings in addressing some of these issues. If you want me to go specifically through them, I can. I'm sure Mr. Smith might have some comments or responses to these also. But, at the same time, they are offering us a free piece of land for a very nice and lovely public purpose. So I think there's also the rule of, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. But yeah, there's some concerns that I have, that's all.
So, hold on a sec. Is there some kind of, as you say, more uniform or standardized parameters for this kind of an easement that you have that you could provide to us and Mr. Smith?
I've written, my firm probably has written dozens. I've probably written at least 10 of these easements. And I follow a general pattern, but this is the pattern I normally follow in writing them. This is the pattern that my firm normally follows. Like I said, walking trail easements, bike path easements, generally it's a very straightforward easement where we're allowed to put the path in. The path can't be blocked. We're responsible for maintenance, and we're indemnifying the property owners. Sometimes in exchange for these easements, we're providing buffering, fencing, vegetation to the property owner who's donating these sorts of things, and that will be put into easement too. But usually there's not a lot of restrictions or directions as to specifically, okay, the township's got to do X, Y, and Z in maintaining it. The township's got to hire these people to maintain it. Normally, there's not an obligation for the township to actually put the trail in. It's just the opportunity to put the trail in. And then, basically, all we're allowed to do there in that easement is put a trail in for, in this case, walking purposes. Everything else is by definition excluded. So you don't have to include things like, well, we're not going to allow hunting in the easement. Well, obviously, because that's not, that property right's not being granted to us. That's still under the control of the underlying property owner. Those sorts of things.
So Peter, kind of following up on what Marla just said, would you be able to provide the board like 3, what you consider pretty decent representations of trail easements that other townships have used?
Yeah, I can certainly provide you
that would
with
be
three
easier
that we created, and I can see if I can find a couple others that were created by people outside my firm as examples.
Yeah, we don't need too many. 3 is
Okay.
enough to look at.
Okay.
But I mean, that would be helpful because that'll give us an idea of what a more typical one would, and then we could see whether most of the things that the items that Mr. Smith and Mrs. Smith have requested, how far off we are from the mark, and then see if we can find one to adopt, as opposed to, like you said, I concur, having a single what do you call it, protocol on how to handle trail easements that are hiking trail easements, because that's what this would be, or walking trail easements, would be beneficial for the township rather than having multiple ones. So yeah, that's my recommendation, see what Peter can provide us, and then find out how far it differs from what the Smiths are looking for.
Are there any other questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the things that are in Mr. Smith's letter are kind of maybe driven by his set of conditions, or his how would you say, playing field that he's working with, specifically like number 7, where he's talking about future maintenance. Since he is working with natural lands, they may have a requirement or a desire to place an amenity in an area where we have an easement, and he just wants to make sure that we would let that happen, from what I can see. So that may be a little bit different than some of the other easements that we typically see, because we have this other entity involved too. That's the way I'm reading number 7.
Okay.
And I guess that also flows for number 8 too, because again, these other entities are going to have their rules. He just wants to make sure that we're okay. I don't see anything.
Just so you know, all this is just, it's not like I'm saying legally you can't do it or you shouldn't do it. I'm just pointing out, you know, what my concerns are in agreeing to this. And if, you know, the Smiths say, yeah, and to make sure the township understands what you're getting into. Last thing, you know, I want to hear is you signed this easement and then, you know, 2-3 years down the road, something comes up and you're like, oh, we had no idea we were obligated to do this. Why didn't you tell us? I just want to make sure you fully understand that, you know, here are all the conditions we're agreeing to and that you go into those conditions eyes wide open. You know, so, you know, if you want to accept this easement as set forth by the Smiths, you certainly can, but you just have to recognize, okay, there are going to be some, you know, strings attached.
Yeah, I wonder if it can be a little more open-ended. I mean, it talks about how we have to install the trail, but what if we got a grant and somebody else installed the trail? I mean, I don't know. I think in some case, a little more leeway would be helpful. Go ahead, Phil. Sorry, can you come to the microphone? Can you come to the microphone?
Jason to put up the survey plan that had the conceptual idea that I had in mind, so I could speak to that as I'm describing and responding to some of the things that Peter's pointed out. I sent it to you earlier today. Basically our survey plan with labels and some overlaid line work, etc.
It is in the Dropbox, Jason, if you can
It's
access
the
that.
final page of that letter, if you have the letter electronically. I have a page 3, which is his plan.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's it.
that's it.
There you go.
Can I feel free to go up and as long as I don't touch the screen?
This was up the whole time.
I'm sorry?
This was up the whole time.
Okay. So a couple of things. First of all, we already have an agreement with Limerick Township, which is kind of what this whole idea is built around, for a cooperative use of open spaces. And that's with the Stonehill Greenway. I've indicated a trail which they're going to be looking to put along the Rhineford Road shoulder to connect where what I'm offering Lower Frederick, which is this section here. It's probably about 560 feet of linear trail easement, but it would connect into a section of trail which I'm also offering to Limerick Township, which is just about 1,000 linear feet. So we're offering basically 1,500 linear feet of our property as trail easement to the two townships. Now, we have an existing trail or joint use agreement with Limerick Township, Lower Frederick, and at that time it was Valley Forge Audubon, which is now Natural Lands property on the Stonehill Greenway. So that said, combined, we already have sort of an existing agreement. I don't know whether you've taken a look at that, Peter, but it basically defines a lot of the things that I used as a model for those requirements. If you recall the first outreach I had, it wasn't clear enough as to what I might be looking for. So after having a consultation with Jason and Peter, we redrafted our proposal, which is what you mentioned as our letter of October the 10th. So in working beyond that consultation, I've discussed some of these matters with Matt Lands. I'm scheduled till Thursday to talk to the administrative staff at Limerick Township, basically do the same thing that I did with Peter and Jason to try to hammer out where their comfort level is and where they'd like to see this thing resolve itself if they can, you know, put together an agreement with us. So all that said, their open space, which is over in here, to the west, is not connected with their open space on the Stonehill Greenway and Lower Fredericks. Consequently, we're trying to make a connection through our land, which we're, you know, offering to the township, to Lower Frederick as a charitable donation. Limerick Township, by virtue of the fact that it will devalue our property when we go for our conservation easement donation to the natural lands considerably. I'm going to hold them to a, not a charitable donation, but a contribution to help offset the costs that we would incur for doing that. But to make a long story short, what we are hoping to be able to do is modeled on what has happened in the Stonehill Greenway. So consequently, we defined, a trail size and makeup as being, similar or equal in nature, if you will, to what exists up there currently. Now, if it means changing the size requirements or making it a little bit open-ended, and we're open to a discussion about that in order to resolve it and get to a point we get to a satisfactory end here. But the one thing I do want to impress on you is that I'm basically taking quite a step out of my comfort level to conserve that entire tract of land. I think it's a great benefit to have that included as a way to access open spaces that are existing that the public can use and enjoy into the future in perpetuity. So that I think will add something to what Peter had pointed out about our conversations and his concerns about them. Are there anything else that I can help you with in your consideration of this proposal?
I think one of the concerns in this was, it was my understanding that this is an option, future option for the township to install a trail. That is, it may happen next year, it may happen in 10 years, it may happen in 5 years, and potentially it might never happen, because we do have to also come up with the money. And I think you're looking for us to install it in a time frame consistent with the Limerick installation, and it may or may not be possible to do that. So I think maybe what Peter's proposing is a little more, I mean, Limerick is a much larger, much more financially robust township than we are. Is there some possibility to give us more flexibility in this?
I say with reservation, possibly we could do that. Now, I say that with reservation because at this point in time, Nat Lands has said to me that, I should go to Limerick and say, we would like you to make a significant enough contribution to this whole project to make it, happen. So if, it was possible to get money contributed from Limerick to have us build the trail, I guess we could move it forward without having Lower Frederick incur the costs of doing that. I'm not quite sure what those costs might be that you're looking at to put this. I mean, it's already clear. Basically, I kept the area open where Mr. Reiner, the previous owner, used to run his tractor up to service the Christmas trees that were growing in this area over in here. So basically, you're looking at a rural, pervious, surface trail. Put some crushed stone down, maybe. Just allow the public to have a defined area. If you want to put amenities on it, then I guess you're looking at additional costs. But by and large, the trail's pretty much there. I mean, Chuck, you've walked it with me, so you're familiar with it. You can walk it freely now. I keep it mowed. It's defined enough that people really don't readily have a vision of leaving that particular corridor. But, if you want to define it more, I suppose that would be a cost. But the way I would see it envisioned from this point here to that point there, it's pretty much in place, We built the trails on Stone Hill, which we have 2.5 miles of trail. And, we had to do clearing and so forth, and we did that with all volunteers. We did not use Public Works. We brought in the Boy Scouts. They donated time and their scouts to do that work with us, in the Valley Forge Audubon Society volunteers. So I'm not quite sure what you're looking at as far as cost, but I know the township has to be cautious of those sort of things.
No, but that's helpful information to me that I didn't know before. I mean, do you want to add anything to that, Chuck?
No, I mean, as Phil said, the previous owner had equipment that he kind of ran around in that area, so it isn't, I don't recall there being any outcroppings or logging required. If there are, they're just little trees, maybe an inch or two in diameter, but.
Yeah, I've had the Limerick Township planner out. She walked the property through my section in Lower Frederick and on. The only area that she indicated that they would have any work on their part was actually because Mr. Reinert used to maintain this area open. It goes into complete woodland in here. And as a result of that, she said they would probably have to do some work where, Terry, you probably know this because you did the excavating for, for Maria Lane, which was left unfinished by the developer, to make a transition from where the excavating for the old Maria Lane proposed subdivision was to take place through this section here. Other than that, it was just some, brush clearing and some saplings and stuff like that to make a trail corridor. So that's kind of what we gathered on our site visit. Now that doesn't, verify anything for Lower Frederick other than Phil Smith's opinion and her opinion, but.
Does that make some of your concerns lesser?
I mean, yes and no. I guess, a lot, since we're dealing with Nat Lands, having been to many of their places with trails, a lot of their trails are just mowed. Is that something?
Yeah, that's basically it. As a matter of
So,
fact,
if a mowed trail, if it's all we would need to do is mow it, then, that's a lot less money than having to go out there and actually make a trail. Likewise, one of the suggestions I had, Phil, you were suggesting a 25-foot trail, or, easement. If it's, as you put it, kind of already all open, I don't think we need that much. I think a 10-foot with a 6-foot wide trail, I've seen that being certainly sufficient. And, the widest I've normally seen is 15 feet. If that would make things easier for you, certainly from my standpoint, not that it's an engineering or based on it, but, from my experience, a 10 or 15-foot wide easement would be more than sufficient for this purpose.
well, I've done a lot of trail work in my years, but I do rely on Nat Lands. So I posed your suggestion to Nat Lands, and they said, we generally ask, and that's meaning the organization, for 50 feet. I said, well, I got to play that in numbers against what the valuation or devaluation, if you will, of the property be, because I'm donating the easement over the entire tract to Nat Land. So, I mean, there is a financial impact by increasing that easement that I'm giving up here.
Right.
For, the total effect.
Now,
on
you do realize, I mean, are you looking for a tax write-off in your donated land to Lands?
Yes, I will be for that.
Okay.
So
you're going to need to go get your, you're going to get your own appraisal.
Yes, I have getting my own appraisal.
Okay.
Correct. And I've already had a preliminary appraisal run on the property, so I have a pretty fair estimate as to what this is going to be for the evaluation purposes.
The easement you donate to the township, if you're donating it fully to the township, that also works for tax purposes.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't consulted with the appraiser to see if there's additional cost to get it, or I have to get a second appraisal done for a minimal return, I guess, because, if we're looking for a very small amount of land, I'm not quite sure whether to spend $2,000 for an appraisal that was separated.
My recommendation is, not that I've represented landowners, but I've been involved in situations with landowners where they've donated in part conservation easements, ag easements, and trails, and it's one appraisal that covers it all.
Okay.
I don't believe you need a separate one.
Well, I just thought because they were going to two different organizations, if you will.
No, I don't believe that. I don't believe that's the case.
Okay.
So, and to be honest, Phil, I'll ask the tax guy in my office to make sure I'm right, and I'll let you know one way or the other. But I think one appraisal can cover it all.
Okay, very good. Yeah.
So are we looking for some kind of decision tonight? What,
I think Phil is.
Well,
what,
I don't necessarily need to have a decision tonight, but I do want to sort of impress on you that I have a lot of component parts here. I'm sort of in a holding pattern, waiting to see how this plays out with the trail easement thing before I end up defining for Nat Lands exactly what I'm going to put under conservation easement with them. So there is a certain amount of necessity for having some direction and confirmation that Lower Frederick is interested in working with us, accepting our charitable donation. So if if, I don't know what you want to do, give me a non-binding letter of intent or something like that that suggests that you want to be serious about this. I will probably be requesting the same thing of Limerick Township. I don't need to have a document for an easement to be signed now, but something that just sort of indicates your sincerity, I think would be helpful to us. And we'll take it one step at a time. I'm not opposed, and Nat Land said they would be willing to come talk to you about how the whole thing is being put together as a bigger picture if you want to hear it from another party. And you have worked with them in the past. I think you understand they're very professional. They've done a lot of this kind of work before, so.
I think that would be helpful. And just speaking for myself, my understanding of what this is going to be, I understand it a lot better, and I'm guessing it'll be something akin to the Maine Preserve. I mean, or maybe a little more than that, because I know at the Maine Preserve, I mean, you're pretty much, it's a pretty basic trail.
Yeah, and we're basically hoping that there's a consistency between what has happened up there and what's going to happen over on here, so it actually increases the public benefit. That's the whole idea here, and brings people into natural area open spaces. So that's why we're, directing, the property to be reforested and go back into being what it wants to be.
I would echo, I think, Chuck, you mentioned, we don't, at the risk of calling you a gift horse, we really don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth. And Peter said that. Yeah. So I think we'll endeavor to keep working with you and try to come up with I would hope we could endeavor to keep working with Phil and come up with a solution that makes sense. And maybe we could see the rules that sounds like Nat Land's rules are a little bit over the top if they ask for a 50-foot wide trail. So maybe, I don't know what the rules are in Green, in the Stone Hill area, and also in the Mang Preserve. What are their rules? Walking in the Mang Preserve, they don't look like they have much in the way of rules other than putting a painted dot on a tree every far enough for me not to see the next dot and wind up lost. So.
Well, I think the position in Nat Lands was when they come to a landowner that has a significant parcel and they would like to be able to locate a tree, they want 50 feet so they have room to, meander the trail within the 50 feet. But it's, if we want to narrow it down to 10 feet, I think we have a trail definition up on our, what's now 24 Swamp Creek Road. It defines it at 10 feet and a 6-foot wide maximum trail there. So, if you want to hold it to that or standard, that's fine. We hold a different standard to the old the Landmaster Rolling Hill Turf Farm or whatever they call that. TJ outdoor maintenance property. We hold an easement on that. I think it's defined at 75 feet. And, I'm not quite sure that they even specify the trail width, but we have a right to put a trail within that 75 foot. So you're right, we probably should be as consistent so we don't have to do an omnibus trail easement ordinance in the future. And I'm willing to work with you if that is, possible and still keep this thing moving forward.
Yeah, I fully agree. I thought this was forested, but and I agree, in a forest, in a forest area, you want that ability to serpentine the trail so you don't impact the trees. But if this is more of a meadow type situation,
Not a meadow. It's a Christmas tree farm that's returning to forest.
Okay. But yeah, I think we don't need as much room to maneuver.
Yep.
And, 10 or 15 feet, at least in my experience, should work fine. And if the board wishes, to keep working, yeah, we can narrow this down and, figure out where the bumps in the road are and smooth them out and get going on it, if that's what the board wants to do. That's certainly, I've done that multiple times with multiple landowners.
Yeah, I think this is a great opportunity. We should keep moving. I mean, I think it would be helpful, I'm not sure when, but at some point, to have Nat Lands come in if they're going to be looking at the whole project. I think that would be helpful.
Yeah,
to get that
absolutely.
that
They've already,
viewpoint.
Jack Stefferite has already
When
offered
that
to
makes
do that.
sense. I don't know when that would be.
And could I respectfully request that you provide me something that indicates your interest in wanting to see this? And it doesn't have to be written as a binding agreement, but just something that sort of puts on paper rather than a nod and a wink.
A statement of interest from the township?
Sounds good, yeah.
So just one other quick thing. So your requirements or standards, whatever you want to call it, that you've provided to us from October 10th, are these identical to some of the conditions that you're putting in front of Limerick as well?
Yeah,
Or-
the
okay.
major difference will be they're not getting it as a charitable donation.
Understood,
Yeah.
but they are, I just want to make sure that their solicitor and Peter, that if they're making changes, that we know what the changes are. So the trail isn't a 6-foot trail and a 20-foot
Yeah.
trail, and so keep it consistent, and then let's move forward with giving some sort of
Very good.
nod to keep working.
Yeah, as I said, Thursday I have a meeting at 11 a.m. with their entire administrative staff, manager, assistant manager, solicitor, public works guy, community planner, et cetera. So they're very interested. But incidentally, I think I mentioned it before, my property is designated on their official trail map as a place where they want to place a trail officially. So this they're looking at as a great opportunity. I came forward without them coming to me. So, that said, there's a pretty good interest on their part to see this thing through. So we'll see if we can get it going.
So I think what you're really looking for, get the right word here, is momentum going into your upcoming meeting. And along those lines, I personally think that we should direct our solicitor, provide us with, I think he said he had some sample easement agreements. I think it's a great opportunity for the township, minimal risk based on my understanding, being on that property in terms of, putting in a trail, minimum expense. I just see this as just some details to work through, but I'm very much in favor of this.
If that's the case, if I can ask for a motion authorizing me to prepare what I'll call a letter of interest to Mr. Smith, and if it's okay with the board, I'll also provide him with my sample easements, just he understands where I'm coming from, and to move the conversation along.
All right. So the motion would be to direct our solicitor to write a letter of interest from the board regarding the Smith donated trail easement, and to have our solicitor provide a sample easement agreement to Mr. Smith. Is that accurate? Okay.
That works.
Would someone like to make that motion?
Sure, Chuck Yiser will make the motion.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. So Supervisor Yiser made the motion, Supervisor Sachs made the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Is that?
You will be bringing natural lands in?
Yeah, they've agreed to kind of help this whole process forward. One last thing I will mention is that you're down on the screen, but we are going through a minor subdivision to take off 1 acre of the parcel that is involved, the subject property here, for the easement. And at that time, I'm not opposed to authorizing my surveyor to do the plan, to indicate on the minor subdivision plan where that easement would be located. But again, if that means that, it has to be done after I've gone through this subdivision, then I would not have that offer out there, but we can include that to defray the cost to the township if you're able to move it forward in a timely manner. So, here you go. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
That would be fine. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, next item, a fire police request from Plymouth Township Police Department. That's,
Okay, so Plymouth Township is requesting the use of the Lower Frederick Fire Police for the following event. It's their Saturday, November 4th Foxtrot 5K. I just also wanted to note, this does not obligate our fire police to attend, as they are volunteers. This is just giving them the blessing. There was nothing in the letter that stated why Plymouth needed, because I don't believe they've made this request before, but I do know that fire police, much like some of the other volunteer aspects of the fire companies, is, you know, they're getting harder and harder to find bodies. So it may be one of those situations.
okay, so we're just voting to allow this to happen, and then the fire police will make a determination whether or not they want to do it.
Yes.
Okay, all right. And if there's no questions, seems pretty straightforward. I'll go ahead and make that motion to authorize the use of Lower Frederick Township Fire Police by Plymouth Township for their Foxtrot 5K event on November 4th, 2023. Do I have a second?
Dan Orff will second.
Thank you. Supervisor Hexter made the motion. Supervisor Orff made the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right. Now, we're going to have since it's not the budget presentation, this is our budget calendar.
Oh, trust me, I would not be starting at 9:30. Okay, so this is, and it's something you guys have done in the past, so just call it this, the fiscal year budget introduction. I had to do this in PowerPoint because we don't have Office 365 on this computer yet, but this is just showing where we're at to date as far as our real estate tax and what our budgeted number is. As of the end of September, we've collected 85.5% of our tax collection, which has the three buckets of real estate transfer, and earned income tax. Yes. Oh, blue is budget and orange is actual. Thank you. I was trying to make this quick, Chuck. Real estate tax is property tax paid by property owners in Lower Frederick. In 2021, we were at $622,666 collected. 2022, we were at $618,511 collected. And as of 9/30, we've collected $620,554. Real estate transfer is the tax that's paid during the settlement of a home property sale in Lower Frederick. In 2021, we were at $167,969, and last year we were at $217,201. As of 9/30, we've collected $105,972. Earned income tax is a tax of earned income of residents. In 2021, we collected $910,353. 2022, we were at $987. Oh, I left the number out. 56. As of 9/30, we've collected $705,000. I am projecting that to be over $1.004 million for this year. We have, as of 9/30, we have received 96.6% of our overall revenue budget for the general fund. Major expenses so far in 2023. The PD had their weapons and taser purchase. PD hired a police officer. Admin, we hired an administrative assistant. We're nearing the end of the sewer extension project. We did the Fulmer Road, Riverside Avenue milling paving. This did include some culvert replacements. We did our meeting room upgrade. The PD has a vehicle purchase that we're anxiously awaiting, hopefully sooner than later, Sergeant Cass.
Very soon.
And then Public Works had a mower purchase. As of 9/30, we have spent 71.9% of our general fund budget. I just threw down a couple of things, what to expect in the 2024 budget. We're going to have a 2025 to 2030 budget projection for all funds. There'll be a capital replacement plan for our general and sewer funds. We will have our road projects. We hope to finish our Hurricane Ida mitigation projects. I think at this point, the only thing would be the flood doors for the sewer plant that I know is somewhere on the list. Receipt of the police and public works vehicles we've had on order, and the Spring Mount sidewalk project. This is just the budget timeline. So I've had one meeting already with the department heads. I plan to have another meeting this upcoming Friday with the department heads just to finalize our numbers before it goes to the board. I'm sorry, it's not the 23rd. It's that should say October 30th. Obviously tonight is the budget introduction. The plan is for at the November 8th meeting to actually do the budget presentation. If all goes well, at the November 28th, the budget draft, it would be advertised and available to the public. And at our December 19th, which we did make that change, Marla, I know we had that conversation, would be the actual budget adoption. So that's kind of the quick run through as far as timeline and where we're at. I don't know if I really have, I mean, other than I'm building from the ground up with this, it's going to be much more comprehensive, but it's taking me a lot of time to do so.
So at our next meeting in 2 weeks, we will have the more detailed budget with the different categories as we have every year. And it will look similar to what we did last year.
Yes.
So at this point, this is just a preview. Are there any questions about this timeline? Looks like anything from Zoom?
So in terms of timeline, I mean, if you go back to that slide, I'm sorry, Jason. So if November 8th would be the budget presentation, and that's where we're going to ask, we'll see what you have, and we're going to ask questions, and people in the public will ask questions, right?
Yes.
So as a result of that, if there are changes to what you presented, then that gets presented again at November 28th, is that it?
So that would get presented at the 28th meeting. The hope being they're minimal, because most of the changes I'd be able to make live. So if it's one of those things, I'll be able to make that instantaneous. Obviously, the board would get that updated draft, so you'll have time to review. And then the hope, still meeting the criteria of having it advertised for 20 days and still kind of running along the lines with our scheduled meetings. That's kind of why I'm working off the timeline. I know last year, I think you guys had to have a special meeting to hit the 20-day mark, I believe. So that would obviously be in play if November 8th doesn't, I guess if November 8th doesn't go well.
I was just curious just to know when, we get feedback and how quickly we need to get it back to you to stay on track.
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing this. I'm trying to match how you guys have done this. This is a little different than what I've done previous. So I will say was a lot more time with the board time with the budget, so I'm trying to accommodate that. But that's also what my hope is, that you guys have a week to digest prior to the November 8th meeting and before the presentation.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? No.
One more, sorry, Jason. So will you have at the November 8th meeting, are you going to have any paper copies available for people to look at?
We can, if that's what the board so wishes. I mean,
I think that would be to have some copies out there for people to look at when they come in. Not 100 copies, but maybe 5 at least.
Yeah, I can provide that. That's not a problem.
I mean, it is, yes, I can look at it on my tablet, but looking up there, it's difficult to.
I've used the TV. I mean, obviously we can adjust that as far as that goes, but, yep, that's fine.
Okay, so we'll look forward to this in 2 weeks. And that brings us to the end of our business for this evening and to public comment. Do we have any public comment? Is that a yes, or are you going home?
You want me to speak at the microphone?
Yes, please.
I don't come to these, I don't really know how the rules work.
Yeah, though the reason being is we have people on Zoom and they can't hear you unless you speak into the microphone.
That's fine, I understand. Patrick
Thank you.
Roberts, Moorhead Road. My question for the board and specifically is there a reason why since September of 21, when Hurricane Ida happened, why Foy Park has not been cleaned up and restored to its original condition? I don't know if everyone's familiar, there's about maybe a triaxle load of river rock stone laying in the park, and I don't know, the weeds grown to about approximately 3 feet tall now.
Well, I think, first of all, that was like probably at least the second time those river rocks were deposited there. And if I remember correctly, you know, we do have like a stream bank stabilization project going on. I thought, the prevailing thought was that maybe once those improvements are being made along the stream bank, then it might make sense to work on the rocks. Because like I said, we had 2 back-to-back years where we had a flood, if I remember correctly, and lots of river rocks deposited in the park. So it was kind of like, you know, how many times do you want to shoot yourself in the foot? That's my recollection of what was
Coincidentally, we
discussed.
also haven't had a flood since then.
Yeah, I
so,
know.
yeah.
Well, that was my recollection of what, you know, and as I brought up before, we're still recovering from that second flood. Our sewer, our operations are not back to where they were prior to that flood in terms of our, you know, pump stations and things like that. So that was
Carol-
my recollection.
Okay.
Hold on. Carol, do you have anything to add regarding what's going on with the stabilization project?
Well, the Foy Park Stabilization Project, that's just the bank. That really doesn't so much correspond to the rocks, but I agree exactly with what Mr. Yiser said. My recollection is the same, that we had repeated deposition of river rock and sediment material in that area of the park. Happened 2 years in a row, and they took quite a few truckloads out the first time. When they talked about this deposition, there was a lot of discussion about whether to leave it go natural or to clean it up. And I don't think I don't know if a formal decision was ever made to leave it the way that it is. I wasn't involved in that conversation, but clearly a formal decision wasn't made to clean it up further. So this is what happens, as Mr. Yiser said repeatedly, when there are big floods at Foy Park or the Perkiomen Creek. You're right, we haven't had another one since Ida, and it's just a question of the township's priorities and where they want to spend their money, and that goes right back to our board.
Okay. I guess really it's based off of the riverbank restoration project. I don't come to a lot of these meetings. I don't really keep up with stuff, so I'm not in the know-how, obviously. But I guess depending on how that project goes, is it possible to look into restoring the park to its original stage? Or is that out of the question? Or, I mean, what happens if later on down the road, once the full park becomes filled with debris, are we ever going to clean up some of that or just let it go?
So I cannot speak to the details of the plan, but I do know that due to the vulnerability of Foy Park to flooding because of where it is located, there is discussion for a longer-term plan of how that park will look going into the future to avoid putting a lot of money into maintenance if it's going to continue to flood. I am not familiar with that entire plan. But we could perhaps ask the park board if they have anything to add about what that
Yeah.
would look like at our next meeting. We could ask that question.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, one other comment, just about some of the situations that have gone on in Foy. I mean, it wasn't just 2 times that we had to replace all the mulch for the playground area. We probably would not have replaced it for this last storm if it wasn't for the fact that it was being covered under the funds, the FEMA funds associated with the situation Ida. I mean, I know our park board, I'm pretty sure our park and rec board have been looking for what is the right approach to take, because it's not going to be less of a vulnerable park going forward from the standpoint of water running over top of it and depositing stuff. So I don't know what the long-term strategy is, but I do know that I don't believe that the situation, just because we've been lucky for the last couple of years, and it takes a long time to recover from a flood like Ida. As somebody who hasn't finished my Ida flood mitigation process in my own home, Perkiomen River likes to visit my house whenever it floods. But I guess the main point I'm getting at is, I'm sure the Park and Rec Board would love to have input from you. If you want to meet with them, they meet on a regular basis, and tell them some of your concerns, because they are a wonderful resource, and they're all volunteers and so forth. So it's really hard for us to figure out we've been struggling to figure out what the right strategy is for that park, because of how often it was inundated with water for 3 separate years in the last 5 years, I think.
It goes back a lot longer than that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just talking the time that we've been here, it's been 3 floods that have, removed all the mulch underneath where the kids' playground is. So that's just in the past 4 years, so.
I guess all I'm asking is if we can just keep an open mind to maybe eventually get it cleaned up and do something with it, because in my opinion, it's an eyesore, and park's got a lot of potential. I understand it's in a flood zone. Things happen, it gets flooded, but
I concur with if things are getting overgrown and stuff there, we probably should make a point of talking to the township, I guess we always call them the road crew, to go out there and take a look and clean things up. If it's really, I haven't been there in a while, so
I was there Sunday for trunk or treat, and
okay,
it doesn't look very appealing. So
okay, well, that's
just
very important.
Just something to think about. Just want to bring it to your attention. That's all.
No, I really appreciate it.
So thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? This is your chance. Okay, so we are now done with public comment. We are going to move to supervisor comment.
Yeah, that's Supervisor Orff. I'm going to make you stay away from your baseball game. Probably everybody in the audience knows what the answer is to the baseball game. But I just want to make a quick statement, and I was going to do this early in the meeting, but I didn't want to keep people from, there's not a lot of audience here, so hopefully you can pass this on to people. I just want to take a few minutes, not a few minutes, this is probably a minute, take a few minutes for a statement related to the Open Space Committee, and moreover, all the township's committees, commissions, boards, and council volunteers. Presently, there's 39 residents that volunteer for the township in those capacities. It's very important to recognize the efforts of the Open Space Committee related to the grant application they did today, but also for the significant efforts that they voluntarily expended in support of the goals of the open space preservation for Lower Frederick. It's significant to mention that all members of the Open Space Committee chose to volunteer the personal time in support of this effort for Lower Frederick. More broadly, Lower Frederick is blessed in that we have residents who volunteer for all of our committees, councils, boards, and commissions in numbers more than sufficient to fill the ranks of those important volunteer groups. Each of these groups carry out important work on behalf of Lower Frederick. Lower Frederick is unique and fortunate in having residents who come forward of their own volition, and notably without the need for recruitment, to properly staff all these important volunteer groups. They do all this while simultaneously somehow attending to their family and their work responsibilities, which is really impressive. I was going to ask the people who are on those boards and commissions to stand up, but given the fact there's probably 5 people in the room, you all can stay seated. And I was just going to give them a round of applause. So we can do that even though it's mostly for our own benefit.
And some of them are on Zoom as well.
So thank you for letting me make that statement. I thought it was significant since we've had so much great participation by all those boards and committees. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other supervisor comment? Nothing?
I have a very quick one. Thank you for everyone, staff and volunteers that made the front of our building look more appealing in the past couple of weeks. And the parking lot is looking a little better with the cracks filled and some nice mums out there. So good job, everyone, and go Phillies.
Okay, go Phillies. Oh, jeez. All right. Thanks, everyone. Meeting's
Thank you.
adjourned.